Aloha. Welcome to another episode of Maunalua, Past, Present, and Future. My name is Kendrick Chang. I'm a community outreach advisor for Livable Hawaii Kai Hui. And today we have a very interesting episode on wildfire management. And for those in Maunalua, we recently experienced a total of 19 wildfires within the past year, especially during the summer season. And we have a couple experts here with us today who are going to share a little about what we can do as a community to mitigate this issue. And with me is Pablo and Lele. Thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Thank you.
So maybe we'll start with Pablo. Maybe just share with everyone a little bit about yourself and how you got involved with the Hawaii Wildfire Management Organization.
Sure. So I'm the community outreach coordinator for Hawaii Wildfire Management Organization, and I've been with the organization for about 5 years. I was born and raised in California, but my mother and brother moved out to the Big Island about 6 years ago, and so I wanted to follow them and live in Hawaii, but I needed to find some way to sustain myself out here, so I ended up trying to find something along the lines of what I had been doing before, which was in fire and conservation, and it just so happened that there was an organization doing that here, and I became an intern to work on a project, and then following that was hired on for a permanent position as a full-time community outreach coordinator.
Wow.
So yeah, I've been doing that ever since, and now live in Honoka'a and been working on Big Island for 5 years.
And yourself, Lele?
Well, I'm originally from Kona, and I went back to the mainland for many years, and I was working in natural resource management and community development. So when I moved back home to Hawaii, I started looking around, and I kept hearing about Hawaii Wildfire and all of the great work that they were doing and all of the great partnerships that they were involved in. So I called them up, and we started talking, and we just had so many similar values and ideas that it was sort of a natural fit. So I'm very new with Hawaii Wildfire, but I'm very pleased to be a part of the team now.
Yeah, and if I may ask, what exactly did the both of you study in college? I'm guessing there's not like a wildfire degree.
Not too many out there. It is a growing field, but I originally got a bachelor's in environmental economics, and then I wanted to learn more about the actual biology of things, and so I ended up studying conservation resource studies as well, and I actually just came across fire as a really random course that I took, and I ended up really enjoying it, and it's been, ever since college, been focusing on fire.
My background's a little different. I studied urban forestry, and although it's not specifically wildfire related, there's a lot of natural resource management tools that are similar in urban forestry, and so it was sort of a new topic, but a similar natural resource management area.
Yeah. And then, the Hawaii Wildfire Management Organization is a 501c3 nonprofit. I was wondering if you can share, how did that, kind of a nonprofit, get created, and, just a little bit about, what exactly you guys do on a daily basis, and then, which communities are you, really working currently to, help?
Sure. We are a very unique organization in that we're a nonprofit serving the function that a lot of times fire service will do in other parts of the U.S. And the main reason for that is a lot of our fire departments here and across the board, they just lack the capacity to be able to respond to fires prior to fires even happening. So we're doing the prevention side of things, doing the pre-fire management that normally, again, fire service would do, or even forestry would do, forestry department. And so our organization, there was a few key fire professionals, including fire chiefs on Hawaii Island, that came together to address some of the gaps that they saw, and created a nonprofit as a way to serve as an arm for the various fire agencies, just specifically on Hawaii Island, and just focusing on the South Kahala, North Kona region, and then we've been growing since. So in the last few years, we've basically seen that there's problems across the board with wildfire on every island, and we are now basically serving that need across the state to help protect communities and natural resources from wildfire.
And then, Lele, maybe, how does, Hawaii Wildfire Management Organization choose, which communities to go into? And, does the specific communities reach out to you guys first, or do you try to reach out first? I mean, how does that process work?
I'm going to have to defer to Pablo here. I'm pretty new to the organization, but I think it's a collaborative kind of fit that has to happen as far as us having the ability to support the community and the community having the ability to bring the volunteers and the support and the intention to wildfire preparedness.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much what we do. We try to find areas where, there's already some signs that there might be some capacity already there in terms of the partnerships that are existing, but also some level of community, even if it's just a few people who are willing to take action. Those are the people who become, the pioneers, and they can spread the gospel really of fire protection. And so those are signs we look for, but also there are the signs that deal with the landscape too, areas that are burning a lot, or areas that have a high risk, which usually means there's a lot of vegetation that can burn, so a lot of the drier areas, especially during the summer, like right now.
And if maybe for the science science perspective, what do you tend to look for to identify that, hey, this valley or this mountain is at a high, potential risk of, having a wildfire versus, maybe a different area? I mean, how, on the science side of things, how do you make that, I guess, assessment?
Well, there's two things we're looking at. We're looking at the ignitions, whether fires are starting, and then the potential for spread of a fire if it does start. So it's kind of a combination of are they going to start? And what was interesting that we found, I don't know if we have any maps available.
Yeah, we do have I think we do have a couple of maps we can get that on the screen. But
yeah, we've noticed that wildfires or fire ignitions typically are started around where human habitation is or along roads, and so we kind of can look at those areas along with environmental factors such as dry and windy areas also have a high potential.
And then right now on our screen, we have a map of the entire whole state of Hawaii and all the islands, and the red dots indicates where the wildfire incidents have occurred in the main Hawaiian islands. And then maybe for Pablo, why is it important to kind of have this data of things? I think people say, well, it's it's just a wildfire up in the valley, it's not affecting a neighborhood or a home. What's the loss? If you could.
That's a great question. It actually will have dramatic impacts down on the coastlines, and we're seeing that more and more.
And to add to that, I've recently been learning a lot more about fire and fire impacts, and I've been amazed at how pervasive the impacts of fire can be across different areas of the community and different resources that we all value. So it's really something that does impact us on so many different levels when it comes through a community.
And then, maybe for, as you guys, focus on, the prevention side, something that maybe, our, local, fire agencies are not able to, really respond to. So, I mean, how important are you, really filling that prevention gap that, maybe, our fire department and other, related agencies may not be able to address?
Yeah, I mean, our fire departments, for one, are incredible because they, for one, have to respond to structure fires, they have to respond to emergency calls, search and rescue, and then on top of that, wildfire. And because wildfire has been such a growing issue, it can be really tough for these agencies to be able to have to focus on the whole spectrum of emergencies that can occur on our islands. And so to have an organization basically be there as a support to do the legwork in terms of the proactive prevention side of things is really, really critical, because time and time again, and there's studies that show this across the board, that when you put a lot of time and effort and money into prevention of wildfire, you actually make a really significant impact in terms of the intensity of the fires and the impact those fires have on people and our lands.
You have anything to add?
Well, our organization is very much for supporting the activities of firefighters and making it safer for them to do their jobs. So that's who we're working for in some ways.
Got it. And then besides kind of working with the fire department, but I think the key aspect of your organization is the community outreach. And like, for example, today before we went on air, you had a presentation out in University of Hawaii. So I mean, the education component is another main part of what you do to engage with communities that you work with. And how much important is that in addition to maybe just the legwork on the ground?
It's pretty key. I mean, the people part is what makes this whole thing possible. Part of it is because 99% of our fires are caused by people. So if we can do the prevention, we can hopefully prevent a large chunk of those fires, and most of those fires end up being accidental. So if we can prevent the accidental side of things through the outreach, whether that's outreach like we did today or outreach with our youth in schools, it makes we hope it makes a really big impact. And yeah, it's a critical thing. I mean, we have a community outreach program as kind of our key component of our organization, because we know it does make an impact.
And there's a lot of things that people can do, just little things, to help make a big difference in the impact that fire has. And so just raising awareness and letting people know about the proactive actions that they can take is very important,
and then
empowering.
Sure, of course. And maybe another more science-based question is I think a lot of people see that wildfires are most persistent in the summer months, and besides just the fact that the summer is our hottest season, why does that trigger number of wildfires? And maybe for your organization, I mean, you pretty much still work year-round, so how important is the year-round process than just focusing on maybe 3 or 4 months out of the year?
Yeah, fire is unique in the Pacific in general, because fire is a year-round issue, whereas in the mainland, fire is it's changing a lot, but predominantly it's summer, and here we do see peak fire season around this time, and this year is certainly cause for concern because for one, we are already going through a drier time, so that's usually when plants start to dry out, and dry plants kind of sends up a red flag for us. That means fires are probably going to start happening, and they already have been. But also a big thing we think about too is the rainfall that happens the year before. And so this past winter, we all kind of have seen it. It's been a really, really wet winter all across the board, and although everything looks good and green during the winter months, sadly from the fire perspective, it again sends a red flag for us, because that just means there's a lot more growth of that vegetation that will then possibly burn in the summer. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and when it comes to the conditions that facilitate the spread of the fire, hot, dry, maybe even windy conditions, they really help spread the tiniest spark into a fire.
And then now, as this episode is, for the Maunalua and East Oahu community, and the reason why, we invited you here this evening or today is specifically for the work you've been doing, the initiative you've been taking with wildfire management out in Kamalunui Valley specifically, and Mariners Cove in Hawaii Kai. Maybe let's first take a step back. Last year, between May and June, there were about 17 to 19 wildfires, which caused a great concern to the community at that time. And that's when you first got involved. So maybe for Pablo, you can share, how you guys first kind of got engaged with our community.
Yeah, we were actually reached out by some people within the community, including through Livable Hawaii Kai Hui and through various different legislative offices. That includes Senator Stanley Chang's office has been really implemental, and also that around that time Representative Chicken Ward held a meeting. And so there's just a lot of, there's already a lot of movement towards having that conversation. And so we were, I guess, people found out about our organization, and then we came out to talk about fire and provide information, as well as, more importantly, to hear about the concerns and start to know, how can we actually help support you guys in terms of your fire issues, because of course every area is different, but in general fire is very similar in that it has very similar patterns. It will, even if a fire on the Big Island, it's the same thing. It's always trying to find vegetation to burn, and it'll get picked up by the wind. So there's really key components of fire that applies to here as well on Oahu.
And how would you particularly rate Kamalunui Valley in terms of its risk for wildfires? Besides the fact that there were a number of wildfires that had occurred in recent years.
Well, I guess we would say it's pretty red in that there's a history of fire, especially recent history, and also there is a lot of vegetation that kind of creeps right up to the edge of homes, and that's a big signifier for danger for homes, because proximity to what we call the wildland areas is usually what threatens whole communities when you have a fire. And all it takes is one or two homes to burn to start having a fire that then spreads throughout the subdivision.
Wow. So what kind of work in particular, besides having the initial meetings, and then recently there was a community work day. Where are we in terms of the process, in terms of being engaged with your organization? How we as a community can continue.
Yeah, so we've actually been using this framework called the Firewise Communities Program, and it's actually a national framework, and we've brought it to Hawaii because we've seen it work so successfully across the U.S. And the idea is it's a way to build community support around wildfire protection and have it become a self-generating thing where the community is really taking it upon themselves to protect community, which also then helps protect the firefighters. And basically, Kamalunui Valley and Mariners Cove have teamed up to become one big Firewise community, and they've been really stellar over the last several months or last year in terms of being really proactive, having these meetings, getting together for work days, and we've even done a comprehensive hazard assessment, and there's some photos of that. This is actually a photo of our team too. But yeah, so we have several we had several people come out from Division of Forestry and Wildlife and Honolulu Fire Department, who've been really key partners in this process, to go out and actually see the hazard, communicate that hazard to the public, and now we're at this point where the work is actually being done on the ground, and just within a year. So it's really impressive to see.
Yeah, that's a lot of progress for just because of uptick in number of wildfires to create this sense of taking initiative to prevent events, because a couple of the fires did kind of cause some concern, especially for the farmlands in Kalunui Valley and other key homes, as there's a major subdivision in the valley, as well. And what can be done next in terms of we've done all this work so far within a 1 year span, but I'm sure that we just don't stop.
Oh, yeah.
Well, it's an ongoing thing, preventing wildfire, and a lot of it comes down just to simple maintenance, keeping your areas clean of debris and keeping the vegetation that's dead away from your home, and just simple kind of housekeeping sort of things.
Yeah, and they're not going it alone, too. There's a whole community of communities doing this work across the state. There's 8 communities who are certified or recognized communities on Hawaii Island. There's 3 on Maui. And it's a spreading movement. We see it as a movement, a very grassroots movement that we're here to support and aid. And the next step is we're actually creating a network and a hui where all the fire-wise communities can actually share some of their lessons learned and what's worked for them in terms of work days, and just kind of have that ability to build the movement and have communities support each other across the ocean, I guess.
Wow. And then, right now, in total, how many communities have you worked with, to this point?
Yeah, we're now at 11 recognized communities, nationally recognized communities, and there's 4 more that we are supporting, including Community Valley and also Sea Country in Waianae.
And then, what are the specific requirements? In terms of you mentioned earlier about there's some sort of national, I guess framework, and then what are really the steps in that framework that you need to really meet or deliver to be recognized?
Yeah, there's a few core things that are required, and one is to have an actual group of people addressing the problem and meeting semi-regularly. Then you also have to have a comprehensive hazard assessment, and then have an action plan, and actually put that action plan into action. So you have to have an annual work day or outreach event, and then the community has to contribute a certain amount of hours and or cash contributed to become a recognized community.
And so far, Hawaii Wildfire has worked with communities through this process to help at each step.
And just taking a little step back, as your organization was created just for mainly communities on Big Island of Hawaii. How did you end up slowly expanding to all the islands and Oahu including?
That's also a very good question, and reflecting back again, it goes back to that need that's there in terms of the fire being a problem statewide, and having all these impacts on our natural resources and our communities. And also for us, it's, especially as a small nonprofit who's working statewide, and we actually work with partners in Western Pacific too, we have to do it collaboratively, we have to have partnerships, and so that's really
And then looking in terms of just Kalunui Valley, has there been anything that struck out to you or impressed you in terms of how us as a community in particular has responded?
Yeah, I mean, for one, the sheer numbers is always a thing, especially coming from Hawaii Island. We're lucky to have 10 people show up to a meeting, and we'll call that a great meeting.
Small, big island, small.
But we came to these meetings, and to see 100 people in the room wanting to talk about fire, a lot of them want to actually take action. That makes us really happy to see, and that's where we know that's where we need to put the effort. And so we saw that early on, and we kind of predicted it right. We knew this community would go far, and they have already been doing a lot of great work.
And then, lastly, for viewers who, maybe are from different communities that have not been engaged with the organization but wants to or feels there's a need, how can they get in contact with you?
Well, we have a number of events that continually are updated on our webpage, and you can contact us through our webpage, which is hawaiiwildfire.org, and that's probably a good way, or through your community if it's a Firewise community. That's another good way. Go through your Firewise group.
Yeah, we have a lot of information and resources on our website, so people can even start by just perusing through our catalog of resources, and from there, if they feel urged to do something in their community, we're always available for that.
Well, Pablo and Lele, it was a pleasure. I hope this was a very informative, episode and topic. And hopefully, we continue as a community to work together.
Oh, definitely.
All right. And then lastly, we would like to thank ŌLELO Studios at Kaimuki High School for putting together this episode, and Livable Hawaii Kai Hui, who are the sponsor of the show Maunalua Past, Present, and Future. And thank you all again for tuning in for another episode. Mahalo.